Okay, for this problem what we're going to do is we're going to use StatCrunch to find the range, variance, and standard deviations for the two samples, and then we will compare the two sets of results. Go ahead and left click this blue icon so that we can click to copy table. We'll left click open in StatCrunch. And you'll notice that we have two columns of data, one that says book 1 and one that says book 2. So in our first problem it says find the range for book 1, as you can see where my mouse is underlining. And that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to left click the stat button and we're going to scroll to summary stats, over to and highlight columns and left click columns. We're going to go ahead and do both of these simultaneously. So I'm going to click book 1, press my control key and click book 2, and we want to do, as it says, the range, the variance, and the standard deviations for the two samples. So we don't need the mean, we don't need n, we just need the variance and the standard deviation and then the range. I'm selecting those by holding down my control key as I left click on each one of them. Now, since these are samples, we're going to use variance and standard deviation. As I scroll down, you'll notice that there is an option for unadjusted variance and unadjusted standard deviation. These are both used when we're dealing with populations and not samples. And if we simply left click compute, we now have a new table that pops up. And this gives me the variance for book 1, the standard deviation for book 1, and the range for book 1. And then we also have the variance, standard deviation, and range for book 2. So we can go ahead and answer our questions. So the range for book 1 for letters is going to be 4. Hit enter. And we have a well done. I'll bring the table back up. We're looking for range for book 2, and that's going to be 11. Hit enter, and you'll see that we are answering the questions correctly. So the sample variance and the standard deviation for book 1. Sample variance in this particular case is 2.933, continuing or repeating, and we want to round to 1 decimal place as needed, so we simply type in 2.9, press enter, and we're off to a good start. So let's bring back the table, and we're looking at sample standard deviation 1.7. Let me move this window over so that we can look at the directions. It says do not round until the final answer, then round to 1 decimal place as needed. What they're discussing there is when you're actually doing this by hand, which we're circumventing that by using StatCrunch. So we'll just simply go to standard deviation, which is 1.712, so on, and we're going to round to 1.7 and press enter. Now we need the sample variance and standard deviation for book number 2. The variance for book number 2 is 14.05, which will round to 14.1. And then we need the standard deviation. We go back to our table and we see that standard deviation is 3.749, which we will round to 3.7. And then the final answer is there a difference in variation between the two books? So choice A, no, there is not a difference in the variation. Choice B, yes, there is much less variation among the word lengths in book 1. C, there is much less variation among the word lengths in book 2. So what we're looking at is there a difference in variation? Well, we're going to go ahead and say there is much less variation among the word lengths in book number 1 because our variation for book number 1 is 2.9 and our variation for book 2 is 14.1, so we press enter and we get our answer of excellence, and that is how it is done.